All right, let's go ahead and get started. Welcome again to another live stream from Signage Live. My name is Tim. I am the technical pre-sales here, and I'll be giving you a little bit of an overview of Signage Live for retail. Today, we're going to be focusing specifically on all of the functionality within Signage Live that is beneficial for those in retail. And we've done similar things with corporate communication, and we'll probably continue to do this with different verticals depending on what you're looking at. And this should be really useful just to talk about some of the features and functionality that we know becomes really useful in a retail environment and what's often requested from us when it comes to creating a retail environment. One of the things that's really important about retail and some of the things we'll be talking about today is it's not just a Signage Live product we're talking about here. We're talking about the entire holistic experience from start to finish. So we will be touching on a few bits that are nothing to do with Signage Live. And that's important because we are the hub and we are kind of the piece that's creating the digital signage CMS experience. But there is other elements that you need to be thinking about when it comes to creating your full experience here. So, digital signage solution and experience for retail using Signage Live. Signage Live is the content management system for creating, publishing, and managing your digital signage experience. However, we know that you need more than just the delivery of scheduling or passive content to make a truly impactful and measurable experience in the retail environment. From interactive kiosks to triggered external lights and triggers, let's explore what Signage Live has to offer you. And we're going to be walking through this document very specifically, but I may defer a little bit as we go through to focus on some specific questions. So creating an interactive experience for your customers. This is something that we're often requested of when it comes to retail because more and more as the industry begins to grow and as retail starts to move away from just the place where you buy things to an actual experience, digital signage has become part of an integral release of new experiences and getting that customer excited about your product or about the products within your store. So retail environments are the perfect place to allow your customers to interact with your digital signage. Many of your retail customers have incorporated solutions into their store that include things like wayfinding, catalog browsing, and order placing. Using Signage Live can deliver custom applications and experiences as HTML5 or web apps or Windows exe applications to your player, allowing your applications to be interacted with by your customers. So digital signage is, kind of your standard view is more about seeing, whereas when we're talking about interactivity, we're actually talking about going up to the screen, touching buttons, showing the content that you want to see on the screen in a very interactive way. There are several hardware solutions out there with integrated touchscreens that we have tested and recommended for the use of our software. These include, but are not limited to, hardware such as Bluefin, which has BrightSign in the back of it, Chrome, BrightSign itself, accredited Windows devices, and that's important because not every Windows device out in the field works with Signage Live. Make sure you're looking at accredited Windows devices. There are a list of devices out there that we can send over to you. Mac and IDEA. So with our Signage Live interrupt feature, you can schedule an update as an attract loop, which is important because when we're talking about getting the most out of your digital signage, what we're talking about is having your attract loop content or that content that you want to display, and that can be promotional campaigns, that can be, proof of play tracked data, which we'll talk about a bit later on as well. But it's about having that content which is your standard and then being able to interrupt that when someone wants to go and interact with the screen to change what's displaying to whatever's most beneficial to them. The attract loop of media to make sure you're promoting products and services while your touchscreen isn't being interacted with. Creating an interactive experience for your customers. So I'm going to play a video here. It's actually from DSE last year, which is still kind of up in the air whether we're going to be there this year or not. The plan obviously at the moment is we will be whenever that date ends up lying. But this is from last year when we attended the event, and this is our CTO Mark Benson going through a bit of an overview of that. So we're going to play this video here, and I'll kind of be quiet and let him talk through that experience for you.
And we have two further demonstrations here. The first one is integration with Queuematic. Queuematic are a queue management solution, customer journey management. So this is all about ticketing and getting people into the right place at the right time. The panel on the right-hand side is built using our widget development framework. That's a HTML5 framework that's available to all of our customers, allowing you to integrate with any third-party solution, display any data on screen. What we've done, we've written a simple interface to the Queuematic solution, so you can simply call tickets forward. So I'll just call 507, so that will animate up, and then that customer's being served. As a new ticket is issued, it just pops into the one. The second demonstration here demonstrates how Signage Live can be deployed with interactive solutions. So this is a touch solution. It's actually a product selector. So you can go through and select products to add to your wish list. The great thing about this is what this actually is an executable. What we've done is we've extended the widget development framework that I talked about a moment ago to actually package up entire Windows XE applications, meaning that you can actually manage and deploy really sophisticated, data-heavy, graphics-heavy applications with Signage Live. We treat it just as a piece of media, okay? So this could be augmented reality, endless aisles, such as this type of solution. Really, the possibilities are endless.
There, because that's kind of the core of what I wanted to take away. You saw a couple of different examples there which are really interesting and beneficial when it comes to Signage Live as a whole. So whether it is kind of running your experience completely when you've got an executable, or whether you've got HTML5 content and you're going up there and you saw Mark a moment ago touch the screen, interact with it and interrupt it, and then start displaying whatever else he wanted to display. In this case, it was a category of different assets that you could go and select through, and that's all HTML5. So that's when we're talking about where Signage Live drop off, because HTML5, we can build that into a widget for Signage Live, but you'll need to have built that before. What Signage Live is doing is managing that content delivery to the screen, and then having a network of managements across a range of players and making sure they're all running as expected. So that's, oops, why am I not full screen here? Bear with me. There we go. So that's a really good example of when we're talking about Signage Live being the hub or the core that takes all of that information from all of your players and manages them. And then you've got your additional features or additional pieces that you want to display, such as HTML5 interactivity. And that's a really core retail experience that we know we get requested a lot. And that's how that's achieved. Some of the things to bear in mind when you're doing this is you will need to find some way of, you will need to be aware of the content that you want to deliver and how you want to deliver that. A lot of the times, anyone who's in web development will be able to create this experience for you. The same thing goes for wayfinding or kind of scheduling or going through that category of items that you want to. It's all HTML5 or an executable, and it's built and then uploaded into Signage Live and delivered in that way. Some of the benefits of running it through Signage Live is we can create that into a packaged widget or a WGT file, which will continue to run offline regardless. So even though we are having an interactive web experience that interrupts in Signage Live, you can also have that run offline without any hazard or concern of it not being interactable if the internet goes out for any reason. So let's talk about making sure your content is shown and when you're expecting to use our proof of play application. So proof of play is crucial if you need to know exactly where, when, and how often your content is displaying. Signage Live itself will be very accommodating in being able to tell you that content is delivered and successfully delivered and displaying. But something we're hearing from our retail customers more and more is that the suppliers or brands want to know with absolute certainty that a player has played the content that they've paid for. So a lot of the times when we're talking about retail experiences, it's backed on with some kind of advertisement or promotion on the screens for the digital signage as a source of income. So what we do with proof of play is basically track and log all of the assets. And we've talked about proof of play in different pieces of streams, but it's important to have it on the retail part because it is integral to that experience that we're looking and we're getting asked for a lot at the moment. So with proof of play, we've created a proof of play application, and using proof of play, you have the ability to trace and report on how long specific assets or groups of assets have been displayed on your players. What's particularly unique about the way that we approach proof of play is that the data is collected on your player locally, so that reports are accurately representing what your player has actually played back. A lot of the times you'll have a kind of assumptive proof of play, or you'll have someone say, yeah, we can deliver the content, and we can tell you that the content's been delivered, and with that you can kind of calculate how many times an asset has been displayed. But what proof of play does is take it the next level up and say, no, this is the report that your player gave us. If that player had fallen off a shelf, smashed into 1,000 pieces, it wouldn't have been able to give us this data. So it's a real example of when data was displayed, and then it reports back to us to let us know what's been displaying. So how do I know who is watching my content? Adding anonymous video analytics to proof of play is the answer. This again is taking this a step away from Signage Live. So we work along services, and you heard Mark mention it in the video a moment ago, such as Qvidi and Ad Mobilize. Qvidi and Ad Mobilize allow you to report anonymous metrics of customers. So by doing that, you can accurately review what age, gender, mood, and more your customers are in whilst interacting with your digital signage experience. What we're talking about there is actually two completely different pieces working alongside each other. So you may have a device such as a BrightSign device, which has Ad Mobilize built into it, or Qvidi, and it also has Signage Live running into it. You'll have a camera on the screen or pointing somewhere roughly where you know the same audience will be, and then that reporting will be coming back to Qvidi or Ad Mobilize, and then Signage Live, you'll have the proof of play data where you can compare and contrast the two together and say, we released a promotion for soft drink A on Monday, and we could see that we had an audience view of roughly 70% male, and we saw increase of sales go up by X amount on soft drink. And you can really start being clever about understanding and publishing your content at the right time to the right audience. Now, obviously, there's a lot of work going in there when it comes to you going through that data and analyzing it and then updating it. But that's how you get started in what is more kind of smart digital signage, and the ability to report back on when this content is displaying, and then actually having an effect, a cause and effect on what you've seen to then what you implement in terms of digital signage. And we're definitely going above and beyond what we would call kind of traditional standard digital signage at this point of we'll display the content and we hope it delivers the results as expected. We're now really going back into delving into the reporting of that and making sure that we're receiving a return on investment, which is obviously really vital in any environment, but retail especially. So let's talk about triggered content, because this is all kind of leading into the last piece, which we'll talk about, which is kind of what is true smart digital signage. So triggered content is vital to making sure you're delivering the most appropriate content at any given time. There are key benefits to scheduling content for different sales periods in the day, but what if you want to display content from external data? So we're talking about two different types of triggers here. The first of which is just your normal scheduled content. You can plan for content to appear on Monday morning or Thursday afternoon or Saturday evening, and that coinciding with that AdMobilize or QViddy data, you can back up on that and make sure that these are the right kind of times to show this kind of content, because we see an increase in sales and it's specifically focused on a female audience, let's say. What if you want to trigger that content based on stock volume or expiry dates or current temperature or the weather or whatever that might be? Well, what we're talking about here is web triggers and the ability to have any data externally. So let's just say you have a weather data service that tells you what the temperature is in one of your site locations, and you say, well, if it reaches over 30 degrees, that's UK degrees, not Fahrenheit, which is warm for any of you in the US, then start displaying ice cream sales, or increase our display of ice cream related products by 50%. All of this can start being delivered and kind of created. Oh, I don't know what I've done there. Sorry. Taking a couple of steps back there. That's what happens when I get too excited about things. So what we're talking about is creating these kind of triggers based on external sources, and temperature is one example, but stock volume. What if you wanted to connect in your content based on what your POS is showing, and you're high on stock, trainer version 1, and you want to get rid of that stock, so you increase the promotional campaign around it based on what your stock volume is. All of these are triggers that can be built into POS systems to happen immediately. Now, there's no turnkey solution for this. We're not saying that this will work out of the box, because it won't. And that's kind of universal for everyone, because we want to make sure that we have to have built some kind of communication that your POS system will be able to hear and send to us, and then we can pick up and then trigger the content on. But it's really vital, especially when we're talking about larger retail experiences, where potentially you're managing multiple stores, or you're managing multiple site locations, or even local, different countries. It's all about having it pre-planned, so your experience with digital signage is pretty limited in terms of picking up and having to do anything. It's all just automated, and this is where we're talking about really smart digital signage. Trigger content allows you to update your player immediately with a message that will be most impactful. Web triggers allows you to prepare content in advance and plan for them to display on players when external triggers are pushed. So that kind of just covers that entire incumbents of where do we want our change of content to be, and how do we want it to affect our digital signage. What if we took it a step further? So we're often asked to create a solution that delivers a smart digital signage experience, which I've kind of alluded to at this point. Making sure your content is accurately being displayed to the right demographic can help increase sales. That's a no-brainer. We've got, users, we've got clients and customers that are of a certain age, and we know that product B is targeted towards that age. We should promote that content when we know that our users are in store are of that age, gender, or any other metric. Can alter the content you wish to promote to their customers. By working with NECALP, as an example, we've created a truly smart digital signage experience. And NECALP measures key audience metrics and triggers a soft content change via Signage Live, via Signage Live's web trigger API. So metrics such as age and gender can be tracked to alter the content to the screen in a subtle and non-intrusive way. So what we talked about before with the ability to measure audience analytics and then be able to measure the Signage Live proof of play data and then make smart decisions based on that, we're taking that a step further and actually having a system that does that for us. So we can start to say, well, if the average age of a group of people within the last hour is that from 20s to 30s. Let's softly rotate that content out to be more specific to them. And what's interesting about this soft change is a lot of the times we're talking about there's a 30-year-old in front of my screen, or let's say I'm in front of a screen, and we want to go and change the content to be viable for them there and then. Well, what that means is you have to have a hard cut or a hard trigger, or a hard stop on the previous content and change it immediately. This can be a slightly uncanny valley kind of situation where it feels a little bit too targeted, or it interrupts the flow of something that's happening before. When we're talking about soft content changes, we're looking at the average over a duration. And when a playlist comes to its natural end, we'll start up another playlist that's more targeted to that general audience group. It's a lot less intrusive, and it makes a lot more sense when we're talking about averages across a board. It's not just focusing on one or two people, and that won't work, especially when you've got more than one or two people in front of the screen, and you just want to take a general average and start softly triggering towards that. So I'm going to run this video here, and I'll probably have to pause it and talk over it a little bit, but it's just a little bit of an overview on how we work with NEC ALP and how we can work with other kind of systems in this way. And this is the core of Signage Live and how we work, because it's all about making digital signage smarter and being the hub of that, whilst you being able to pull in other elements that you need to create a really powerful digital signage experience, which is not just ready for the 21st century, but it's ready for the future. So let's play this video and I'll kind of talk over this. So I've got NEC ALP, which then communicates with Signage Live and publishes that content. Signage Live then goes to the NEC ALP enabled players there, which we can see on the right hand side, and that player information is received and is ready to use, and it goes back to the local store and the site. This is where I'm going to have to pause because this video is a little bit faster than I want it to be. Let's just let it run through to its end, and I'll pause it here. There we go. So we've got a lot going on here, and I'm not expecting you to go through every single detail and understanding this entire experience, but what we're talking about here is Signage Live communicating with NEC ALP, giving it our proof of play data so it can make smart decisions based on that proof of play data to update the content on the screen. NEC ALP will be using its own data and picking up on information via a camera to understand the users or the clients that are in front of the screen, and with that and the proof of play data and with the triggers, it can trigger the right content to appear on that screen for that generation of users of clients, or for, let's just see, the gender, or you see someone turning up with wearing more tracksuits, then let's target more tracksuit based content. It really is yours to build the way you want, but we're talking about that next level. And what this is kind of based on is creating an experience for your retail customers to remember and to be more engaging with each individual. So I thought I'd just show that as a high-level overview. For those of you who want to dig into this further, there is documentation on Signage Live that we can point to, and we'll probably include that when this turns into a video, so you can go and have a look at that as well. Let's go back onto there. The last thing then that I wanted to talk about is RTEs and real-time events. So to explain real-time events, we've talked a lot about triggering, and triggering is about making that content change on Signage Live side based on an external push, whether it be a web trigger, whether it be the weather outside, whether it be audiences. But what if we spun that the other way around with real-time events? Real-time events allows you to trigger external player based on the content currently being displayed in your Signage Live player. That can either be through a HTML5 or a serial. So this allows you to create a truly unforgettable retail experience. Your digital signage can trigger lights to change, displays to move, whatever you're looking to create. This is a fairly kind of condensed sentence here, or a couple of sentences, but what it's about is saying that we can plan content within Signage Live to trigger an external source rather than the other way around. Lights is a great example. It's one that we've used in the past when we look at our room booking displays, which will change the color on the built-in display to show green for when it's busy, for when it's free, and red for when it's busy. But we've had some really exciting conversations around how this could be achieved, and it's always retail based because it's about creating that spectacle. You could have, motors start to run based on a piece of content. A good example is you've got your digital signage screen and you want it to rotate dependent on the content that you want to display. Maybe you've got portrait content or landscape content. Well, I want to flip the screen to display it in the way that you want. And these are things that really are unlimited. So if you want to have a really exciting experience One that I always end up going back to is car sales, because we know it's a high value item. If you wanted the curtains to lift up on the car that someone's purchased whilst the lights go down and a spotlight turns up whilst the digital signage is saying, thank you very much, Mr. Customer, for your purchase of your brand new XYZ vehicle, and the car rolls out, all of that kind of stuff can be done with RTEs and triggering that content based on that experience. And that can even come down to someone being able to type in someone's name and hitting a button, and then this entire experience just kicks off. But we're talking about Signage Live being a part of that experience, not the entire experience. And that's where RTEs really come in. That's pretty much everything that I had to talk you through today. It has been a very talky conversation, so obviously if you want to go now and have a look at the platform as it stands, feel free to reach out to us and raise a conversation with us. If you've got any other questions around any of the pieces that we've discussed, then do reach out to us directly. We're more than happy to have a further conversation. And these are generally conversations that are best had with you directly, because everyone's experience that they're looking to achieve is very different. Aside from that, that has been the session today. So thank you very much for joining us. If you do have any questions, we'll be answering them in the question section below. This will be turned into a video and most likely be turned into a document online that you'll be able to find with some text followed up with it as well. Aside from that, thank you very much for joining us. My name's been Tim. We'll be covering back every other Thursday at the moment. We've covered a lot of ground and we're starting to just dial it back a little bit, because at the end of the day, there's only so many things I can talk about. But hopefully this has been very useful to you. If you do have any questions, feel free to reach out to us directly, and we'll see you again next time.